shroud. Walk us through the shroud. I'm sure most people know what it is, but let's start talking about this.
Yes. So this is the purported burial cloth of Christ, and this perhaps is the most interesting object on the planet. Partly because science can't say how it was made. We know how everything was made, don't we? But they don't know how the shroud was made. Is it a scorch? Is it a painting? Is it a rub? Is it something else? And this is a linen cloth this is something that is in Turin in Italy. And this is what we would say the burial cloth of Christ as referenced in the Gospels. And this is something, there's always mysteries to it. There are questions about where it has always been. It has not always been in the possession of the Pope for all time since the cloth happened. And that's the real mystery. They can't explain how it came to be. There's all kinds of incredible aspects to this shroud, but it hasn't always been in the possession of the Pope or the Church for all this time. So that's where the big question mark lies. And you can point to the place where the face is on this cloth. Now, there's all kinds of discolorations on this shroud. And a lot of people look at the shroud and say, well, what are we looking at here? This is a linen fiber cloth, and there's all these kind of red marks and holes all over it. And that's because it was caught in a fire at one point, and it was damaged. Now, one of the interesting things about this cloth was venerated for centuries and centuries as the burial cloth of Christ, but nobody knew it had any information on it. Until Secondo Pio, this photographer, Italian photographer, took some photos of it, and in the negative saw the face of Christ. So I don't know if we have that image that we can pull up.
We do.
So this is the image in the negative, and all of a sudden, our eyes can see something amazing, which is the body of a crucified man.
So on the the positive image as opposed to the negative image, right? If you're just looking at it as a cloth, do you see anything, or just look like what we were just looking at, just smudges kind of?
You see those smudges, those light smudges. Okay. And of course, if you know what you're looking for, you can find it like we just did. But when you see it in the negative, it is amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And if you tell any Catholic who doesn't know about this, or a Protestant or a non-believer, that this cloth exists, people are blown away. To me, this is the most interesting object on earth.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, many, I don't know if controversy is the right word, but there's a lot of science that has been done on this, right? There's been a lot of tests.
Yes.
One of the most interesting ones that I've heard is how, where the image is within the cloth. You referenced that a minute ago. Can you talk about that? Like, where is this image in the cloth?
Right. So we might say, is there an easy explanation? Is this paint? Has this cloth been painted with or wrapped around a statue or something like that? But what's interesting about this is that the image exists on the very top fibers of this cloth. So it's not painted into the cloth, burned into the cloth. If you were to lop off the very top layer, the image would go away. So it's just on the very thinnest, topmost layer of this linen cloth.
So, kind of strange question. So, let's say this is a cloth. All right. So this side is laying on the table and this side is up, like bottom up. Are you saying that the image is on the top, but Jesus's body was underneath? Is that what you're saying?
We don't know where his body was with the cloth. Was it on the side that where the image is on, or on the other side? There are theories that this happened at the moment of the resurrection, where perhaps through radiation at that key moment, that created the image. Nobody knows how it's made. Even the most pious Catholics, the most Catholic scientists, the people who want the absolute best answer of how this was made, we don't know. But I think one of the ideas is that radiation could create that very top level thin discoloration of the cloth.
If his resurrection, again, I'm going to butcher this a little bit for the shroud experts, and there's all kinds of shroud experts out there, but at the resurrection, if there was a burst of light and his body, does anybody say that his body would have passed through the cloth? And that's maybe how the image got layered
Correct.
at the top of
Yes,
it?
correct. I mean, that is one of the theories of how the image was formed.
So if his body was totally consumed in a bright light, then the image could have basically been shot onto it, kind of like a photograph.
I was going to say, think of a photograph. That's exactly what we could be dealing with here.
Okay. Now, walk us through the injuries that you're seeing here.
Sure.
It's maybe obvious, but maybe not so. This if it's not Jesus, it's somebody else who got scourged and crowned and crucified.
Correct.
Right? So walk us through the injuries that you're looking at.
So, and that's one of the key things is we know a lot about Roman crucifixion. We could say that, this is just some man on some cloth, but we know it's a Roman crucifixion based on the injuries of Jesus, which correspond, of course, to the gospel accounts as well. And we see, of course, prominently in his wrist there, his wounds, which
Extra blood. That
yes,
would be blood.
Correct. And the blood on the cloth is actually bright red, which some people have attributed to the high bilirubin content, which is due to the beating that his body would have endured, or due to the radiation turning the blood bright red. There's some debate. But
What does that mean? Bilirubin?
Bilirubin, it's a substance in the blood, which apparently, when we talk about the scourging or somebody going through that kind of trauma, your blood, everybody knows that you have a Band-Aid, the blood turns brown. Mm-hmm. But in the shroud, the blood is bright red. How could that be? So the two theories are, one, high bilirubin content from the beating he went through, or the radiation affecting the blood and causing it to be the bright red color that it is today. Because they do know it is human blood of blood type AB. So they do know that for a fact that we're dealing with human blood on the shroud.
And AB, isn't that predominant in Middle Eastern men?
Correct.
So if you are beaten severely and you bleed in like a unusually traumatic way, then your blood is likely to be extra red?
That is one theory that I've read.
Okay.
So again, the two competing theories, because we would expect the blood to be brown on this cloth, but it's bright red. Mm. So the two theories that I've heard presented is this bilirubin concept or the radiation concept. So
okay, what else?
So we see different scourge marks or lash marks on the body.
Just all over the back. It's just everywhere.
Yep, everywhere, exactly.
Back down his legs, his calves.
And various doctors and scientists have looked at this and said, the wounds do correspond to the Gospels, and they, anatomically correct. This is a real person. This is not a statue. This is not the flow of the blood, for example, would be, you can see the blood on the arms, etc. Flowing down would be from somebody laying down. And we see on his forehead as well.
The crown of thorns.
Yes, blood crown. So
is the foot wound, does it show that the nails would have gone through the ankles or through the foot?
I don't know this exactly. I know there are different scientists who have commented about where exactly it's gone through on the hands. Some say it went through the palms and then back out through the wrists, and then on the feet there are theories about how that entered as well. I don't have that expertise, but
the palm and out through the wrist.
Yep.
Like that.
Correct. I mean, that again, these are theories that people are drawing from seeing this image.
So if they put a nail in at a downward angle, mm-hmm. here, but I find that a little significant because when we get to stigmatists, you know where I'm going.
Yes, I do.
I never thought about that. I've never heard that it could be that angle, but I've always wondered why some stigmatists have it here and mm-hmm. some stigmatists have it here.
I'm glad we're going to talk about
and that angle going down through the palm and out the wrist could help explain that.
Correct.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I did not saying cool about torture. That's the wrong word.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. But for me, one of the most fascinating things about this shroud is the material and the pollen on the shroud.
Okay.
So this shroud has existed in France, Italy, and the Holy Land. If it were truly a hoax, wouldn't we expect this cloth to be found from plants and materials found in France or Italy? Mm. No, it's from plants from the Middle East, the place of the crucifixion.
Yeah.
And also pollen. they are able to trace where the shroud has been over the years because of the pollen that's on the shroud, from the Middle East to France to Italy. And this is before anybody knew anything about pollen.
Right.
So let's say somebody in the 1200s is when some of the dating said it was, had this idea to make this cloth.
They couldn't afford
Why
that.
would they have thought to do that?
Wow.
So to me, that's amazing.
That's a great point. They
Yeah.
they would not have known to be that fraudulent. They wouldn't have known to fake that.
They wouldn't know what they didn't know.
Right.
And so, of course, 1988 was the big year when they did the testing at the University of Arizona and other universities around the world. And they came back with a very disappointing result that made people disregard the shroud for years. But now the shroud is back in the news. But that dating said that it was from 1200 or so.
Mm.
And that about lines up to where how long they've known where the shroud was. So once that news came out, everybody said, all right, we know it's a fake.
Right. But explain why that was a bogus test.
So there are different theories on this. The one theory is that because of the fire, where some of the cloth was destroyed, the nuns or the other caretakers of that shrine wanted to repatch the shroud and put it into one sheet. And so the areas that were burned off are actually replaced by newer cloth in around the year 1200. So when they did the samples, they didn't take the samples from the center of the cloth. They took it from the repatched or rewoven areas.
Around the edge?
On the
or
edge.
Do you know if it was like this part or was it like around the edge?
It's the edge.
Okay, like
the very
edge.
To be the least destructive possible.
Sure.
And you can actually, there have been studies done this on a microscopic level. You can see that the weave changes in that time period when they repaired it. And a different material was used in the weave.
Mm.
So, and that was the area that they used for the testing.
Does this have a preservation factor to it, like a mysterious preservation to the actual cloth like the tilma has?
I don't know if this would have been expected to deteriorate in the same way that the tilma had,
Yeah.
but I do know today they don't show the shroud publicly anymore.
Probably to preserve it.
To preserve it, right?
One of the things that just strikes me with this is, for some reason, the backside just shocks me because the scourging was atrocious. I mean, it looks like the scourging was a death sentence itself.
Sure.
And it was just the beginning.
Yeah, and apparently the Romans knew how to get somebody right to the point of death, but not kill them to maximize the pain.
Mm-hmm. Question on this, and then Kevin, in a minute, we'll turn to maybe some of the AI models, which I just think is fun to look at. But recently, there has been a resurgence, very recently, I think like just this Lent, thank goodness for Twitter or X or whatever, X, that Bernard of Clairvaux, who's one of my favorite saints, and I mean, I just love that man. He doesn't get enough press. He had a mystical experience where he learned of a new wound of Christ called the shoulder wound of Christ. And he wrote a prayer about a devotion to the shoulder wound. That has gone around recently. Very few people knew about that. I mean, I didn't, even though I read Bernard. I never caught on to that. And then I read that Padre Pio, a young John Paul II, went to see him. I guess he was still a priest, and he spent a week or something with Padre Pio before Padre Pio was famous. And he asked him, what's your most painful wound from the stigmata? And he surprisingly said, the shoulder wound of Christ that no one else knows about. And then after his death, the people that took care of him found on his cloth all this blood on his shoulder. Did I get all that right?
Yes, that's what I've learned as well, is that was his most painful wound, Padre Pio.
I wonder if it's, when somebody analyzes this closely, if they're seeing something unique about the shoulder. I mean, you got scourge marks up there, but I guess the cross digging into his shoulder. And then also, I wonder, I think maybe I got this from Mel Gibson's Passion movie, but when he's being crucified, they really yank his shoulder out to get to stretch it out to where he can be nailed to the cross. I wonder if there was even like a dislocation pain. I don't know, but This is an amazing thing. Now, you want to turn and see the AI reproduction?
Yep.
Okay. Kevin, now what's this one?
It's like a 3D kind of extrusion.
Wow. Okay, so this looks like above. Oh, this reminds me of a question. I don't know how much you know about this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it's Dr. Gilbert Lavoie who wrote a book on the Shroud of Turin. He's published a couple books. He argues, I don't want to misquote him or misexplain, but he thinks that the body, this is an image of a body that's like upright, that it's been elevated to where head up versus laying flat. And part of his argument for that is, for example, his hair is hanging down. If it was laying flat on his back, the hair would be compressed back. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I definitely know. We don't know how the image was made, but yes, there are different things that point to it being an upright image, in his book especially, or his report does mention that.
So, I mean, if, like, just trying to think logistically, you're a dead body, you resurrect, you stand up, are you levitating? And
right.
then you take off the cloth and you leave it there, and then it ends up in Turin later. I mean, I'm trying to think how that happens, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of mysteries related to the shroud, and these are all good questions for heaven, I think.
But there's a lot of speculation.
There's a lot of speculation, right?
Kevin, what about the other one where you actually see his face?
Can you both pull your microphones a little closer to you?
Yeah. Look at that. Look at that. So if I understand, Kevin, that this is AI taking the image from the shroud and showing us what he could have looked like, which is just incredible. You had some other ones there, Kevin. Didn't you have like some other things? I mean, again, this is all just kind of like AI, but it's a good use of AI, I think, you know? So I think he's pulling up. Yeah, I mean, these are just other images that AI has generated from the shroud. And these are all just based on that shroud image. I just think it's quite remarkable. But our Lord looks something like that. I mean, it's not far off from what he really looked like, you know, if you believe in the shroud, you know. Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for that. Now, do you believe in the shroud?
I do. Not everybody does, of course, and I think the gap in history is probably what a lot of people have trouble with. The holy winding sheet, where was it up until the year 1200? And there's lots of theories about where it was, but I think that's a problem for a lot of people, the lack of historical record. However, things like the pollen and the commentary of the scientists who have looked at the body, who else could this be? And as I started off saying, the mere fact that they don't know how it was made, they can't make a reproduction of this. To me, that's mind-blowing in this day and age. So for me, this is the burial cloth of Christ.
The greatest, what would you call the greatest possession, the greatest artifact in the history of the world.
Correct.
Amazing, amazing. Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.